Greetings, and thank you for tuning in to my latest video. As it always is, Gordon Causey here, otherwise known sometimes as Gordy Canuck if you follow me on Facebook or Twitter, and going to be sharing some more thoughts. I'm recording this on Sunday, the 25th of May, 2025, and I'm going to be talking about South Africa, or if you prefer, South Africa, to try and affect something of an Afrikaner accent. Um, Before I get rolling, you are welcome, as always, to like, share, subscribe, all of the above. If you enjoy my content, I do appreciate engagement, so you're welcome to fill the comment field, whether you agree or disagree with what I'm about to put forth. As I often do, I'm sharing something that I posted to my Facebook timeline, so I'll be reading from my notes. And what I wrote is this: what lessons does South Africa have for the broader Western world? And attention spans in the Western developed world can be incredibly short. COVID was something of an exception to our usual passing interest in issues and events. COVID, held our attention for months, for years. But even as significant as COVID was, and the impact it had and continues to have, given the overreaching measures brought in to address it. Even still, a lot of people have chosen to forget about it almost completely. But I'm going to leave COVID aside. And I would argue that the normal shelf life for significant events is anywhere from just a few days to maybe a few weeks at most, depending upon the significance of the event or the news story. Like Canada's recent election is already fading into the ether. Before that, everyone was up in arms about a looming trade war with the United States. That that trade war has disappeared, like all the deaths that were supposed to happen to people who didn't get the COVID jab. And before that, there was the story of all the plane crashes, one in Washington, another in Alaska, Philadelphia, overturned plane in Toronto. I'm probably missing some. Then remember when everyone was talking about transgender boxers at the Olympics. Uh, and there are always wars going on, the war between Russia and Ukraine, or the conflict between Israel and Iran's proxy forces of Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. It's just that we cannot maintain our focus for a long time in our culture. And already the situation in South Africa is starting to drift out of focus like a disappearing dream. And no doubt, all powerful news media will have something else for us to focus on, probably plenty of things. So before the situation in South Africa is pushed completely out of the news cycle and out of our collective consciousness, I thought I'd share some thoughts. Uh, Over the past week or so, I've learned a great deal about South Africa's long and very complicated history. But even with everything that I've learned, I have to acknowledge that what I've consumed is only a tiny fraction of everything that can be known about South Africa's 400 plus year history since European colonization. South Africa's ruling government and our own lying propagandistic media were very quick to herd the flock, the mass, the herd, to herd us all away from the claims of Afrikaner genocide that came out after South African President Ramaphosa visited the White House. Basically, they were saying, nothing to see here, folks. That's the message. No genocide. Here, look at something else. That's the same way they tried to get people to ignore the claims that SARS-CoV-2 came out of a lab. No, 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 nothing to see here. It came from a wet market. What all this attention has done is to bring into focus the fact that South Africa is a mess. It's a Western developed nation that is spiraling downward. I heard one academic describe the country as a ship that is both heading in the wrong direction and sinking at the same time. And that's quite a metaphor. What do you do when your ship is heading into like a hurricane that is going to tear it apart and it's sinking at the same time? Now, some are going to want to start bailing out the water and to patch up the cracks in the hull that are letting water in so that the ship doesn't sink. And some are going to be more fixated on the storm, on the hurricane that's going to rip the ship apart and going to have everyone wanting to grab the rudder or grab oars to get the turn the ship around and steer it away. And right now, the conflict between farmers and those who want to kill them and seize their land is as old, this story is as old as human history. And it is all of human history. It's the history of Europe, it's the history of North America, even before Europeans arrived, and it's the history of Africa before colonization as well. Skin tone, how much melanin we have in our skin, has nothing to do with our broken and fallen human nature. We see someone with more than what we have, and we become jealous. We covet what they have, and that covetous attitude can and does lead to war and murder. We're informed of this in the story of Cain and Abel. Cain was a farmer, and Abel was a keeper of livestock. Abel's efforts, his work, were rewarded. He brought his best to the table, and fate, for lack of a better word, smiled upon him. Cain, not so much. And so Cain was filled with envious rage against his brother, against his own family, and he killed him. That is humanity. This is what we are. It's our natural path, you could say. And it is played out at every location on this earth, at every time, with every people, and with every culture. But I have to recognize that in the broader Western culture, things like biblical wisdom, forget it, it's out of favor. We pay lip service, we have pretensions to this Judeo Christian worldview. But notwithstanding that, our world espouses a familiar Marxist dogma that says, well, religion is just the opiate, the drug of the masses. Without even being aware of it, lots of people, and especially the young, are being indoctrinated with the failed precepts of Marxism. Karl Marx, to boil it down to the most basic level, he taught that human history is all about a struggle between classes and that it is a political struggle. It's about the rich versus the poor, the oppressed versus their oppressors, about the proletariat and the owners of the means of production. That's very Marxist language. So if you're a farmer, the land, your irrigation systems, your tools and equipment. These are the means of production. And that makes you, because you're the owner of the means of production, that makes you a member of the oppressor class. You are an oppressive individual because you are owning the means of production. And Marxism has the solution: seizure and state control over those means of production. In terms of farming, the typical term is collectivization or collective farming that was implemented in countries like the old Soviet Union under Stalin. And the result of collective farming was mass famine and death, starvation in the millions. Read up on it if you want. And there's a false narrative being foisted on us, which is hurting the human population into a dystopian Hunger Games type future. We have what is called this presentation of a narrative which has been labeled the noble savage, and it's a myth. This term, the noble savage, is often attributed to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, 1600s Frenchman, philosopher. Broadly speaking, it holds that the world's ills are the result of societal advancement and technological innovation. The idea is that humans that were basically good, and that when we live in traditional, like Stone Age type existence, when we live in harmony with nature, that our goodness has its fullest expression. And in this mythological narrative, people who were living in places like pre-colonial Africa or pre-colonial North America, that they were living a harmonious existence, absent with no jealousy, envy, not even really self-consciousness. These attributes, again, jealousy, envy, and self-consciousness, among others, they are imposed on humanity by civilization. And we tend to view the word savage as derogatory. But in this construct, it is civilization that is to be looked down upon in a derogatory fashion. Savagery is pure and good, it's raw, beautiful. To be civilized means to be corrupted, upside down world. But fields like anthropology teach us that civilization does not impose greed, jealousy, envy, these failed human characteristics, because they already existed in pre colonial cultures that were living in a world absent of advanced technologies. Before the Dutch arrived in what is now South Africa, there were wars, there were disputes, there was criminality, and there was every other human failing. White Europeans did not import moral corruption to Africa any more than they did in North America. The only manner in which this argument has any currency, this idea of the noble savage, the only way it has any currency is that before the arrival of Europeans in places like Africa, the things that people were jealous of were less technologically advanced. Now, I need to wrap this up. Um, could go on forever and ever. But to sum up, what's the answer? And the answer to our fallen human nature that leads us to want to subjugate others and to take their stuff, it's not to follow the disaster that history shows us Marxism always brings, whether socialism or whether you go full on Marxist or whether you try and water it down, it doesn't work. Instead, we need to get back to our Judeo Christian foundations and follow more closely the wisdom preached in the Bible, in Scripture. And one of the first things, it starts with the admonition that we are not, in the Ten Commandments, we are not to covet our neighbor's goods. The writings of the Old Testament instruct us to look after the widow and the orphan, in other words, to care for the most vulnerable members of our societies. The farmer in the Bible is instructed not to harvest the entire crop. Farmers in biblical times, according to scripture, were to leave the edges of their fields alone so that people in need, the poor, could glean, is the term, go and they could get the means of survival. And of course, these rules were never followed perfectly. And so God took on human form and lived among us to show us what is possible. That those who want to be first, that they have to be last. That those who want to be served, they must themselves serve. That it is the humble who shall be exalted in the resurrection, and the exalted, they're the ones who are going to be humbled. But that requires a belief that this life is not the end, which is why Karl Marx took direct aim at religion, and religion is the outward manifestation of a belief in God. And he called it a drug, the opiate of the masses, implying that it's only for, religion, faith in God, that's only for the unthinking herd. No, the unthinking herd is only concerned with what their neighbor has, with their standing among their peers, with what they're going to eat next for dinner, with the desire to be dominant. That is the game of the masses. So, what lesson does South Africa have for our Western developed world? That if we keep going down this path toward Marxist ideology, that we are staring at a future that preaches scarcity instead of abundance, poverty instead of wealth, and starvation instead of bounty. Thanks for watching. Again, you are welcome to like, share, subscribe, and to fill the comment field down below. I am endeavoring to do live streams on Wednesdays and Saturdays in the evening. 9:30, 10 o'clock is my aim. I can't promise that they will always go off. Life gets busy. I work. I'm a one-man show. This is not my job. It's just something that I do enjoy doing. So again, please fill the comment field if you feel so motivated. I enjoy reading the comments. I make an effort to reply to as many as I can. We will talk to you all when I do my next video. Take care. God bless.